Awesome. So, welcome to our seventh episode of the Impact Show. I'm so excited to have some of the greatest leaders in tech and collaboration around a topic that I think is so important. As many of us 2 months ago, we had no idea what was coming. This virus economy and the shift that we've all made around collaboration and technology, whether it's using Zoom for our businesses or Google Hangouts for our education, we're all feeling it personally and professionally. And as social distancing is becoming the central focus in dealing with global markets and technologies for communicating effectively are becoming a forefront topic, and that's what we're going to really talk about in this discussion. Today's interview are with some of the top executives sharing their perspectives and solutions to meet these new challenges coming to our modern workplaces, as well as all of us as Americans and people around the world personally. These solutions include technologies for collaboration, distance learning, training, marketing, and support for other business functions. So I'm really pleased to have with us today Neil Grover, CEO of Indie, former CEO of Buy.com. Maybe you can just raise your hand so our audience knows who you are. Dr. Charlotte Griffey-Brown, professor of Information Systems and Technology Management at Pepperdine's Grazia Dio Business School, all the way from Washington, thank you. Josh Kreitzer, CEO of Channel Bakers, one of the largest Amazon ad agencies in the world and a prolific leader in the digital space. We've got Sean Daugherty, the founder of Mophie. Everyone has a Mophie. We're stoked to have you, Sean, and so excited about your new project, Volanic. Can't wait to pick your brain. Jeff Volpe, one of the greatest leaders of modern time, president of North America Sales and Operations for ViewSonic Corporation, hundreds of thousands of their monitors around the world. Gaming, can't wait to talk to you about gaming because that's a big growth market. And Rob Hutter, managing partner of Learn Capital. Rob, if you could just give us a wave. Rob, of course, is overseeing one of the largest portfolios in the ed tech space, and we can't wait to hear your thoughts around how K through 12 is adapting and how parents are adapting and what that means for modern education when we all go back. So I'll just throw this first one out. What are some positives that come from the quarantine? So new businesses are being launched and people are adjusting to these collaborative work environments. What's your organization doing to help put these initiatives in place? Because obviously maybe it wasn't in your plan book of how you were going to adapt, but now you're adapting. Can you share a little bit about some of the work that you're all doing?
Who wants to go first? I'll go first. I'll jump in. So yes, absolutely. Work from home was an experience. I actually had 9 employees start the day that we sent everybody home. We sent everybody home, I think Monday, March 30th or something along those lines, but right before the state said so. And we were unprepared for it, admittedly, but we have everybody here on 27-inch monitors. They work from laptops, and the laptops part wasn't going to be a challenge, but we have creative graphic designers and things of that nature. So we had to dismount monitors and from desks because they're all attached via a mount, run around the office, find the original mount that came with the monitor, and then record all the serial numbers and have them sign a document and send them on their way. And we did that with 72 employees, plus the 9 that started that day, that moment. That was a pretty interesting experience. We since then hired an IT firm to specifically be able to manage remotely any one of those systems so that we can keep track of them, keep monitoring of them. So from a new business standpoint, that guy picked up the IT service, picked up some new business. But then looking at, we touch Amazon, we touch Walmart, we touch a lot of the major brick and mortar retailers as well as pure play online retailers. I've got face mask, vendors coming out of the woodworks. I've got one of my CPG beverage brands has all of a sudden switched their focus to doing hand sanitizer. I now have 2 hand sanitizer clients that we got them set up on Amazon and launched overnight, literally, to the point where now combined, those 2 clients are moving about 1 million units a week of 2-ounce and 4-ounce hand sanitizer because Purell and Amazon's own house brand Salimo have been locked down for hospitals and government agencies and first responders. So now all of a sudden there's an opportunity for hand sanitizer brands to exist. So there's a number of new business opportunities. I don't think it's all bad. I think there's some definite categories, categories that are wavering. I could give you one would be apparel. So apparel for us and for our clients has contracted. Amazon has limited the amount of purchase orders for non-essential products, and clothing does not fit into the essentials category. But computer monitors, on the flip side, absolutely has. And some of my monitor clients have seen POs and purchase orders explode overnight. Some of my B2B headset guys, the same. So
And,
there's some balance there to some degree.
and that's a great perspective, Josh, on the commercial side. Why don't we ask you, Charlotte, from the academic side, how's Pepperdine adjusting to this environment? Tell us, as a professor, how you've been able to make the shift.
Well, I teach at the Grazie School, and I'm editor-in-chief of Technology and Society, which is an international journal, but I also serve on corporate boards on risk and governance primarily, as well as sometimes technology committees. And there's nothing like a good crisis to disrupt an industry, right? Some of us in higher education have been seeing the need and actually working very diligently to create pathways for disruption that meets the mission that higher education should be achieving. And so I've been teaching online for 7 years, and this wasn't a huge lift. However, for most residential programs, and even our undergraduate residential program and other residential programs, it was an enormous lift, right? However, to your question of what are some of the good things that have happened, number one, it's forced higher education and education in general to ask some really important questions about geography and space, about technology and space, about talent and geography, and priorities within higher education as our population in this country and others has an enormous new section of mid-career adults that need to pivot. So it really is forcing some powerful questions. And I think, number two, it's forcing us to rethink people, process, technology, and data in ways that we should be.
Good points there, Charlotte. Rob, let me turn it over to you. You're overseeing a lot of ed tech businesses. How are people transforming at the K through 12 level? Maybe like 60 seconds to you.
Sure. Well, I think it's a good one coming in from Charlotte because she just spoke about what's going on at the college arena. I mean, K-12, as all of us know, if you have children or you know people who have children, you're embarked on the greatest homeschool experiment probably of all time. And there's so much texture here, Sinan. I mean, I think one of the things I'd try to spotlight on is this, especially as we think about what occurs post-COVID. Many of the largest school districts in America, including LA Unified, Chicago, Philadelphia, others, recognize that there was a very, very big disequity. It was an unfairness issue because a lot of students in lower income brackets simply did not have access to wonderful laptops, did not have access to high-speed internet that was reliable effectively to conduct distance learning, be that as they may, at all the levels of preparedness that different districts and schools had all over this country and all over the world. This issue was something that was very poignant here in the US. And we've already seen some very interesting responses. Chicago went ahead and essentially bought several 100,000 what we call Chromebooks or Surface. They're inexpensive laptops. New York City bought a bunch of Apple products as a result of attempting to provide continuity of remote learning. But the bigger picture was, look, LA said, in no uncertain terms, because of these unfairness issues, we are literally not going to do a full remote learning program because it would fundamentally be counter to the equity goals we have for the district. What does that mean? Well, it certainly provides a quick snapshot of the level of readiness that K-12 had all over this country and all over the world, but it also points to what's likely to happen right afterwards, which is an enormous increase in spending, in many cases capital expenditure spending, to see infrastructures built so that we have continuity in K-12 going forward. And I know Jeff's on this call and Jeff can talk to this directly, but you are going to see a response rate that's second to certainly critical places like the hospital system and healthcare and other areas of infrastructure necessary to solve for future pandemics. We're going to look at school in a totally new light. We want to be able to make it possible for instructors to teach kids who are in the classroom as well as at home in a very seamless way. And by the way, all these children in the future will have devices. So as we look at the world, we see this similar, hearkening off Charlotte's points, in many ways as this is an opportunity, clearly to take what would have been, I think a digitization increase of about 300% across the next 10 years. We're now predicting more of like 1,000% increase in digitization of education payloads globally, 3% to potentially 30%. So huge dividends. And there's much more to talk about in college enterprise, but I certainly think that's one of the things we're watching in K-12.
And Jeff, great comments there, Rob. Jeff, I'd love to get your opinion. ViewSonic has their integrated flat panels out in many school districts across the nation. Can you talk a little bit about your perspective on ed tech and how the landscape's shifting?
I'd be happy to. I think, we have a very large sector of our business that is in the private sector as well as education. And, this is a paramount shift in how businesses are managing themselves. It's really a time for technology to shine and take advantage of the opportunity to help businesses and education sort of redefine how they're going to go to market and how they're going to extend their services effectively. On the education side, ViewSonic does have indeed a significant share in the integrated flat panels, which we're going into the physical schools. But we also built a piece of software called myviewboard.com, which is a software that is allowing us to add a lot more modules and layers to allow education to be more effective in the remote environment through streaming services, through the ability for all of those Chromebooks to connect in with the teacher via web and many different other agnostic platforms. I think what we are trying to do here at ViewSonic is recognize the fact that there is a two-component piece here, is the actual education of the children by the teachers and how the teachers and children have to start to change the way in which they do the work. Curriculum development takes time. It just can't go from analog to digital. It takes months to prepare for these things. So in the meantime, between that eventual place that we're going to be, we have to be functional now. And so what we're trying to do is provide pieces of our software to allow teachers to talk to students, both the students that are in a very good place with high internet speed, with good PC functionality that can get connected to the curriculum that the teachers are trying to teach, whether it be a live stream or whether it be a recorded stream. We offer both of those services because there is such a diversity in the ability for kids to learn. And our initial thought was, hey, this is going to be a daunting task. And then we settled in and we started getting a lot of people engaged in this. And now we're sitting here looking at this as not a daunting task. It's a wonderful opportunity, both for education and for businesses to do better with technology and let people really see just the wide breadth of what's available for them to build their business. But to switch off of this, the ones that are running the schools and the institutions and the businesses are now faced with, a balance sheet challenge that is very different than it used to be in terms of infrastructure management and how remote workers can be continued to be energized and excited and engaged. And this is an incredible transition of our economy and the way people are going to be interacting with one another. On the technology side for ViewSonic, it's been fantastic in that, our monitor business, as Josh said, just spiked incredibly because everybody had to go home.
Right.
And while a 13-inch laptop is nice for a day or two, it certainly is not a productive device for, months. And so getting people with the right kind of technology, monitors, webcams, you name it, is a really interesting shift here. But it's just the beginning of a whole way in which we're doing business and a whole way of which we're educating students.
Right.
We're finding that and hearing that 3 in 5 workers, now that they've been remote for a while, would like to continue to do that.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because, we always thought that this collaborative environment in a workspace would be great. Well, I certainly think it is. But I would also say that statistic is only 4 weeks in. I wonder what everybody's going to be acting like in 8 weeks from now, when we're sitting looking at the same 4 walls and what have you. We want to get into the social environment again.
And I think it all comes to blended, right? So one of the companies we work with is Ware Malcolm, a very successful architecture firm. one of the things that they're doing is helping enterprises re-engineer the interiors of their enterprises for these blended work environments. I don't think it's going to be exclusive right back 9-to-5 workplace as it was before, but more of a blended. I completely agree with what you're saying, Jeff. Jeff, you, Charlotte, a lot of you were on the stage at Impact in Las Vegas. And one of the things that we discovered in our own impact report was, back in the late 90s, it was Internet 1.0 with the World Wide Web. Then came social media, in the mid 2000s. And then, this new thing came, which is really user-generated content. And I really see, Neil, you being at the helm of that. I know you guys are working at Indy with some large universities on user-generated content. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I feel like this virus economy has helped Internet 3.0 and is going to grow your market. Can you comment a little bit about that?
Yeah, with regards to universities, a couple of things that we're doing, we're helping a couple large universities with setting up virtual job fairs, and so it'll enable their students and their soon-to-be graduates to, in a very private setting, upload video UGC, so videos about themselves, why they're passionate about certain companies, what their roles they're looking for, and then just able to get across their personality since they're really not doing in-person interviews today, and kind of for that initial screening before a company determines that they want to do a live video call with somebody. It enables these companies to be able to come in and see, a wide group of candidates in a very easy manner, but still enabling them to then take it to the next step without having to set up in-person or in video live videos. Some of the other areas that we're working with universities on is actually part of their curriculum now, since they have gone from school from home, enabling their students to upload videos or kind of presentations, but more so done through video, user generated again, whereby the professor can collect all the content. Some of it's public where the other students can see it, most of it's private where it's just one-to-one, but in a very nice setting that the professor can get it in a really easy manner, and it gets across more than just a written exam.
Awesome. On the consumer side of product and the way products are moving, maybe Tony, you can comment a little bit about consumer privacy. I know Neil, you've got this massive database of products that Indy is managing on behalf of the influencers and people that are in your platform. But can you talk a little bit, Tony, on the consumer side as far as privacy and some of the bold moves that the collective is making with your new platform? Maybe give us a minute on that.
Yeah, so what the collective does is we have a membership that allows people to submit their expenses, their utilities, their bills, their rent, their mortgage, which would normally they wouldn't be sharing, anywhere from medical expenses to their grocery receipt. And we aggregate, organize, and anonymize this data into some proprietary technology. And it's really that safety and that privacy factor is what allows consumers to make that leap into a startup environment, which is what the collective is, and give over this personal information. And we take very drastic steps to give them, they have complete ownership and complete control over every ounce of data that they produce through our network and our platform. And the way we do that is through that stripping of that personal information, which is very, very key, but giving them complete ownership and control of it, meaning it's like a bank account. You can log into your bank account, you can see what's in your bank account every single day, but I can't go and log into your bank accounts. They can do the same thing for that data. And that's where we've started seeing in the past month of our launches, we've been collecting this information from consumers for about 2 years in development. And we've really seen a huge drastic change in their consumer spending behavior. And it's exactly like what everybody's reflecting. Even with the stimulus and everything else, they're still buying the groceries, or they're still actually using that money to pay down their debts. And their discretionary spending is completely dropping off the charts for about 80 to 85% of the households that we're monitoring. And as we've surveyed these people over and over about, where do you guys see you going in 6 months? Consumer spending doesn't look like it's going to rebound. And just they're concerned. They don't know what's going to happen. They don't know when they're going to get back to work. They're not confident in state government or federal government's response. And really, this is kind of a great environment for us because we help them monetize this information that they create every single day. And for the first time.
Right there. Let's talk about that right there, Tony. And I'd love to hear from Sean Daugherty on this. It's a great thing for us. I'm hearing this by a lot of tech-based companies, cloud-based companies. Sean, give us a little bit on your perspective of all this, and maybe even give us some perspective on some growth markets. And I'd love to hear from all of you around that. I think a lot of our viewers are curious as to, obviously we know Zoom is doing well. Who else is doing well? Sean, let's hear from you a little bit.
Well, Amazon's doing great. I think we all can agree on that, hands down, right? We've been waiting for a really large shift in .com business, and that shift is occurring right now in this here and this now. And it's going to be really interesting to see which retailers actually come out of this pandemic healthy enough to stay alive. Huge shift in what's happening with manufacturing partners that supply most of the consumer electronics brands in Asia. In particular, a lot of them have shifted to PPE type devices in lieu of consumer products because retailers are closed. I mean, we're not really sure what's going to happen other than there's going to be significant growth on .com. And the next 6 months are going to be extremely telling. We're seeing major shifts, lots of orders canceled from consumer products companies in Asia. Goods are very difficult to get out of Asia right now because it's mostly med tech type devices that are being allowed to exit.
Right.
And if those companies weren't already exporting those goods, it's very difficult to get them out. And so we're seeing a big shift, and there's going to be a lot of market consolidation, I think, because of this pandemic.
Right. And let's open this up for you, Josh. What do you think about some of these product orders that are being backed up on Amazon and other e-commerce platforms? Do you have any perspective on the spring clean that's going on?
Yeah, so we've seen quite a few different shifts. One of those shifts is looking at, again, I'm going to go to the phrase essential versus non-essential. Walmart has invested billions of dollars trying to catch up and compete with Amazon. And if we were to look at everyone else out in the retail landscape, they're probably doing the best at catching up. But looking at now Amazon putting a lot of resources towards essentials products, a lot of those other products, and I'll use Xbox as an example. Part of being home, there's a couple games where you can't do multiplayer on the same television screen. So me and my son needed another Xbox. So I went out on a mission to get an Xbox. And on Amazon, it was one of the non-essential products that has a delivery window to the consumer of 4 weeks. Meanwhile, I went over to Target.com and saw that my local store had exactly 1 unit left in stock. So I ordered it online and I went and picked it up at the store. And then, of course, they've got the delivery to the parking lot scenario. That is a shift where now all of a sudden I never shopped at Target.com and I just became an online shopper for Target.com. Likewise, Walmart is seeing that same pickup in consumers now shifting to Target and or Walmart. Because Amazon's really highly hyper-focused on doing their best to flatten the curve and provide essentials. And I congratulate them for that, absolutely. But the shift in behavior is now opening the door for Walmart from a user base of people signing up for a Walmart.com account, same with Target, to all of a sudden grow. What we saw looking at like the other retailers that you see in the Buzz news feeds and what have you would be Costco and the lines around Costco. But from an e-commerce standpoint, they really are lagging massively. They only had 900 products online available. Of those 900 products, 490 of those products were jewelry. And the rest of the product categories were like shoes and like a Weber barbecue. It was just a very, very extremely limited assortment. Whereas both Walmart and Amazon have created marketplaces where, to fill gaps for product assortment, they've allowed third-party brands and or sellers to go then create those listings and offers on their website so that they can fill those product inventory gaps. So the 2 points here are, one, there's a shift in behavior with regard to what people are buying. And Sean, I took your point to heart. And also Tony, your point to heart with regard to, the consumer confidence. And I'm always watching the consumer confidence index as kind of like my bellwether to whether or not retail is going to do well. I'm now going to go check it again. They just put out another one on March 27th. We'll check that out as well. But really, it's just this shift of what people buy and where they buy it. And we did an entire workup. We asked about 10 survey questions. We surveyed over 10,000 people. And I put those findings out on our website for shopper behavior insights since COVID. So I'm not going to go through all of them now. You can find them on our website. It's on our blog, channelbakers.com. Click on the blog and you can see those insights. But we're seeing a lot of that. And we wanted to put real data behind it instead of the qualitative statement of like, well, everybody's shopping online. We wanted to be able to put data behind like, well, exactly how many people have shifted their shopping behavior to online. And then where are they spending their money and what are they buying? And so we did that study and that survey.
Neil, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just jump in. I totally agree with Josh on those. And as Sean is saying, I definitely see Amazon taking even more line share on, more so in categories that they haven't been known for, or that they want to grow quite a bit in, like grocery, which obviously they've spent a lot in there with Whole Foods and others, but I see them definitely taking bigger share there. But where I do think other retailers are starting to pick up as well is if they're deep in a vertical, and they're actually known for that category, like Home Depot, like Lowe's, like Wayfair, especially if it's work from home type of things like apparel, clothing that has to do with being comfortable, being at home, home improvement, barbecues, freezers, fridges, things like that. So outside of, again, because although Amazon is driving deeper penetration, is definitely gaining share in categories that they want to go in, that they haven't been as well established, but that's relatively speaking at their volume. It is opening a window for certain other brands, retailers, and categories that may have been not as at the front line of the pandemic, and helping folks where, in this case, they are seeing
So let's talk about that other categories, and I'd love to hear from all of you. What does your crystal ball say of growth markets? Where should people be putting their time, energy, investment in what are the growth industries in your opinion?
Well, I'm going to throw a fun one out. So I look at Amazon's search behavior data all day. So 72% of Americans go to Amazon to do product research. That was the latest stat that came out. So looking at their data of what people are hand typing into the search field gives us insight to what's popular and what have you. Of course, you can expect hand sanitizer, toilet paper, Lysol, Clorox wipes, all of those products. But a fun one that we did not expect was bidets. And if you don't know what a bidet is, Google it. Right? That was a shopper behavior trend that we were not expecting as a category that we would never expect people to go to Amazon to go search for, right? That was one that was kind of a curveball that we thought we all kind of got a chuckle out of. The other one that has been on Amazon's top 10 most frequently searched products for the past 3 years is adult coloring books. And the number one most clicked on and purchased adult coloring book is Calm the F Down, an Irreverent Guide to Stress Relief. That product, the last I checked, is actually sold out. So that's another category shift in terms of what people are buying. But going back to the conversation about grocery, yeah, this is the battleground for online grocery shopping. And Instacart probably has the biggest opportunity to gain and win here. That would be one of those shifts in what people are buying and what category. So I totally agree with Neil on that.
I want to add what Josh sees on the front end of what people are searching, we get on the back end where they actually land. And we can tell from, we break it down into 3 parts. First is that online search, which Amazon's the king of when it comes to products of anything, and those reviews. They're the gold standard. That's where most Americans go to. But you started seeing this shift because brick and mortar retailers on their development of omni-channel over the last 10 years is finally now coming to fruition, because Amazon, you can't drive to and go pick up your products. And, they have certain places like in Irvine that you can, but there's 20 Walmarts within a 10, 15-minute drive of you. There's, 20 Targets. And so you started seeing this shift of buy online to reserve that, then pick it up. And then where we see a ton of growth in consumer spending is obviously subscription categories, where, these subscription services that are going to be delivering either directly to you in person, DoorDash, Uber Eats, those things have seen a huge lift, because why even go out for pickup if you're afraid of catching, COVID? On that second piece is, like what you were saying about Instacart is what you're seeing is a transition. I'm probably the youngest person here. Is I grew up in this world. This is the world I've lived in my entire life. An app for that, a subscription for this, that's all I've really ever known growing through as a consumer. But what you're seeing is that transition of that consumer style buying and behavior into older generations, because they had no other choice but to force to adopt it. And that's where you're seeing this greatest change, where Netflix, Hulu, anybody that's online that can deliver instantaneously, that's the huge growth. And then that second part is that intermediary or that last mile. If a consumer has to wait, and that's what you were talking about from Amazon, is people have to wait, and people don't want to wait. Yeah.
I gotta say, I'm insulted by what you just said. You really think you're the youngest one here? Don't you know Josh is only 19? I mean,
I did shave. I
shaved. That's for sure.
Not even old enough to be on video yet.
Who claims they're the youngest one on Zoom? I mean, that's just not cool.
I think, Sina, I may have been in technology longer than Tony's been alive.
Yeah, you absolutely have. But in the case of how we use technology, I am the first generation that was fully encompassed by it, right? And then the next generation coming after us, where everybody's after, those Gen Z consumers are going to be 80-year consumers, right? And this is where you saw the Uber Eats and the Instagram, but now they're getting a huge lift because forced adoption. You have no other choice but to adopt these platforms.
You hit on a couple of things I want to go to is the over-the-top media services, Netflix, Amazon, everything is instantaneous now. Quibi launched, Meg Whitman's a great friend of ours. Give us some thoughts, Josh, 30 seconds to start this next wave of content around OTT. I mean, what is going on? Are people really spending that much time on Netflix, on these shows and these programs? And what is that doing for our society and the future of commerce?
Yeah, it's so whether it be Hulu, Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Walmart even has one that's called Vudu that kind of competes with Hulu and the rest of them. And then Disney Plus launching as well. Let's just talk about it from an advertising standpoint. Where should brands be advertising? They should absolutely be advertising on every one of those subscription-based OTT platforms and connected TV platforms. But another one that is a no-brainer, and we kind of put it on the back burner when we think about all the hot new platforms, is YouTube, right? Looking at my kids as Gen Z, they are glued to YouTube. And then there's content providers on YouTube that are actually retailers. So the one I want to highlight is VAT19. Those guys, my kids watch VAT19 videos on a daily basis. And in fact, we as a family can't even gather around the TV to watch Disney shows anymore. I mean, albeit all my family got involved in The Mandalorian, but my kids and I and my wife and I, we watch VAT19 hidden in plain sight videos. That's where like one of the employees goes and hides himself throughout the entire office and the owner has to go seek him out and put him back to work. We watch VAT19 videos all the time, but they're a retailer who has a very niche product set and they get to charge full boat margins and they have this viral following of people looking at, their content. That's an example of like e-commerce marrying great content in an OTT or online connected TV environment. Let's not forget that, YouTube exists and a lot of people are digesting content there, as well as obviously within all of the OTT platforms, of which Amazon OTT is the newest. And again, from an advertising standpoint, what they have that no other platform has is all of your shopper behavior content. So as an advertiser, as an endemic manufacturer who makes a product that goes on a retail shelf, I would leverage Amazon. But if I was, a local restaurant, I might consider something like YouTube, right? So that's the kind of mindset behind, let's call it advertising within the OTT landscape. But this is the year for OTT advertising to explode. And obviously it's because everybody's watching that content.
Any other comments on consumer behavior as it relates to OTT and just media?
There's an interesting one that Jeff and I were talking about the other day, and this is going to be very surprising to people. So an acceleration of e-commerce for sure, OTT watching for sure, and obviously online education services that go direct to consumer have exploded. Our company Coursera has seen multi-100% increases all over the world. One of our companies, Edmodo, had a 17x increase in traffic as people started to use that. But really an interesting synergy between OTT consumer e-commerce and being at home. We have a company in Orange County called Higher Ground Education, and they run one of the largest platforms of Montessori schools from pre-K all the way up to actually high school. But most of their operation is focused on the traditional pre-K and kindergarten Montessori programming. All over the country, they're all over the world. They're in Europe, they're in Asia. But in response to COVID, they did a couple of really smart things. One of the things they did is they made their schools available to emergency responders, which is necessary, and they've kept 50 campuses open for that, and a variety of programs they provided to make it possible for those families to participate. But what's really interesting is they started almost because they needed to, and because they felt it was possible to offer the world's first online Montessori school for kids as young as three years of age. And I'll tell you what's really interesting is you have a situation where a teacher who's trained Montessori, accredited the whole 9 yards, is doing activities with children through a video hookup, but also where the parents have already prepared environments in the home. And the children then engage in activities that are offline, as well as interacting with the group. And for parents that have to do work, and many of us do, and if have children of that age or know people that have children of that age, obviously it can be very challenging to manage all these things. So the online Montessori has proven to be a godsend for parents that need to get a couple of hours of working. And what's really interesting is there's now a discussion about making that online Montessori be something that comes OTT. The child is actually engaging there's a webcam, basically with the television. And hopefully, as Jeff and I were brainstorming the other day, there might be a way to make that an interactive television that folks can use. This thing has literally resulted in thousands of families signing up all over the country, all over the world. We had to now run night shift. We have Australian, New Zealand families doing this. And what's really interesting is this is something that is a response to the pandemic for sure. But what's also intriguing is as you look forward in the post-pandemic era, you now see this prospect of new behaviors that will be with us. This is now a new way, perhaps, to have your child receive high-quality Montessori education. It's one of the most powerful forms of education. Jeff Bezos, the founders of Google, and so forth. We all probably know someone who went to Montessori, but this is a way to access that at home. And for parents that work a couple of days a week, for all those parents that are going to now work remotely, and also, for children that stay with grandparents during the day. What an interesting way to actually get high-quality, high-fidelity education, but at home. And that's certainly an acceleration and innovation.
I want to hit that education vein hard there. Charlotte, talk to us about Corona Pivot and the transitions to thrive in this change that's going on and how that shift's going to play out in the next few months. Any thoughts there?
Absolutely. And I think we've heard over the last few minutes extraordinary examples of companies that are doing just that. And my good friend Cynthia Cohen and I, we work on a board together. And one of the things that we were arriving at was just what we've been talking about. How can we thrive in this environment? And we really felt like this whole process was similar to grief. You have disbelief, followed by acceptance, followed by adaptation, which is what we've predominantly been covering. And then if companies are really smart, they'll put together this innovation strike team that's going to begin to put together the plan for what we call the economic surge. And I think that those companies who put together this strike force and start pulling not only the ways that they've adapted, how have they used existing assets, how are they developing new opportunities, what are they investing in, and what is the psychology of behavior in the future from an analytical perspective. What can we expect possibly? And then what are the metrics that are going to signal we need to step on the gas, that we're ready to implement? That's the new dance step that we've been working with firms on and talking about. And you hear already some of the companies that are in the adaptation moving to the innovation stage. And that will roll out once we move into this economic surge.
And Rob, I see you nodding there. Can you talk a little bit about how the whole education landscape and divided up higher education and K through 12? I know you're on top of a big hub. What do you predict is going to change in the way that education plays out and in the way that people get educated in the future?
We talked a little bit a while ago about the K-12 transformations underway, but I think the broader takeaway is that online education has just received a 5 to 10 year jump start. Mm-hmm. And what some people are finding, just as they are with remote working, that online education isn't some sort of inferior substitute for sitting in a classroom, for example, certainly in college, but actually in most and many respects, far better than you could ever have in an in-person environment. Mm-hmm. And this is the light bulb that will drive behaviors that we think will persist for the rest of our lifetimes and beyond. I mean, you have situations where companies like one of our colleges is called Minerva. It's part of the Claremont McKenna system, interestingly enough, and it brings very talented students from all over the world. Last year, more applications than Dartmouth and MIT, amazingly enough. Brand new college in San Francisco. What's interesting is they have physical campuses all over the world, but all of the student teaching occurs through a platform that they developed, which enables students to engage in what's called active learning. So there's not 7 minutes that go by that someone is speaking without some sort of corresponding activity that occurs around the group. And it's been programmed to enable active learning. It does things like it can literally detect whether or not you're paying attention. And that use of AI and ML and all the other fashionable buzzwords, what it does is it creates an experience that drives some degree between, depending on the targets we've used, but 2 to 4 to 5 standard deviations of retention, of academic efficacy in different ways you can measure. It's an extraordinary achievement. And now you can use it online. And they're not the only ones. This idea of active learning classrooms, AI-enabled classrooms, where we can engage with content that's on the screen, student, teacher, groups of students engaging together, where things are adapting to what we need at that moment from a personalization point of view. This blows away anything that's occurred physically. And to some degree, as Charlotte pointed out, and some of the others have discussed, and Jeff pointed out too, for an on-campus type of format to suddenly jump and go online, it's one thing to certainly, to droll on a passive video carousel basis. It's radically different if you want to create an experience that harnesses all the capabilities of online to really create something that engages that learning. It's essentially, it's a total retooling. So now we have a world where, yes, it's all online, but there's a big asterisk. It's online, and for providers and for companies and for educators and for instructors that have figured out a way to leverage what's now possible. Because if you do leverage what's possible, your effectiveness will be multiples of what it was in the traditional framework.
Okay, thank you, Rob.
We should be happy for humanity in that regard, because our need to upskill and reskill, going to be.
I think one of the, to add to what Rob's talking about, I think blending it back to over the air and content, I think we've seen all of our big companies that have been extraordinarily innovative with doing business a new way. Amazon, Netflix, the big ones. They've really embraced technology and platforms that this time warp that we're in right now, it's showing just how innovative and how strong those particular companies have been. On the education side, content is a critical component for effective education. We all know that, it's obvious, but now it's shifting from a curriculum, from a teacher talking to video assisted learning to over the air learning, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And doing this effectively takes some time, but I will tell you, I think that content is a challenge and an opportunity at the same time in education. Number one is, what kind of content are the students being asked to look at? How does a student get content that is independent, that's effective, but how does also a teacher use content that is syndicated and licensed to effectively do learning? There is some level of opportunity for content consolidation for educators to use and access content to proliferate better learning, but at the same time prevent the wrong kind of content coming into an open forum discussion. And this is some of the things we're working on to try to augment what Rob and Charlotte have been talking about.
If I could jump in for a second, Jeff, because I want to see if perhaps content is really the center. And I agree with you that faculty should no longer be the sage on the stage, right? That's no longer a viable pedagogical model. But I do believe when it comes to pedagogy, the key is not content, but engagement. Because
Yes,
even with our children, we want to make sure that they are engaged with instructors. And the type of engagement and how they engage is different. They may no longer be the sage, but the guide, as in the Montessori example, where you're kind of moving them through other types of engagement. So I think from my perspective as an educator, one of the key issues is engagement. How can they engage with the content, with each other? Because learning is essentially a social activity, at least part of the time. And also, how can we then engage with not only faculty, but business people? I teach at a business school. How can we ensure that there's client-based learning, that those in the mid-career are able to make the pivot they need to make in order to move on to the new careers that are going to develop in the future? So I just wanted to kind of throw out there the possibility that what we really could be focused on is engagement.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the value proposition that all of these online services have been able to give, is engaging with their platform. And teachers and educators and businessmen and women will have to figure out how to leverage content. It's not the center, it sort of is, depending on how you look at it, but it has to be facilitating what we always have tried to do, which is engaging participation, learning, listening, executing, etc. So I agree with you. I think that's a good point.
Hey guys, we're going to wrap up here, but before we do, I've built my career in the B2B space, right? Businesses doing business with other businesses. And there's this whole foreground of businesses that are popping up, like last mile delivery for big shipping centers like Amazon. And everything we talked about has power connected to it, whether it's your phone, your laptop, whatever node you're on, it has one thing in common, and it's Sean Daugherty. Why? Because of power. She is the inventor of Mophie. Sean, tell me, what's in your inventor mind? What's next around power? And then I'm going to ask one final question to our incredible panelists to wrap this up. Sean, back to you.
Power is never going to go away. So I think there is going to be a lot of advancements in technology when it comes to batteries and products surrounding batteries, whether it's in our offices once we come out of this or in our homes. But the need for battery is just not something that's going to go away. I think there's some amazing things coming out in terms of next generation real wireless charging that I'm super excited about, that you'll hear more about from me in the future. Just hopefully we see graphene brought into the consumer products world soon. But it's not quite there yet, but we're not far away from it.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean. And I'm very excited to help you get that message out on what you're coming up with next. So stay tuned. In closing, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to do 30 seconds on one tip for our audience. Think, these are small to mid-sized business owners, VPs in enterprise, nonprofit leaders. One bit of advice for our audience to be ahead of the change. So change before change changes you. What can they do to better prepare themselves as they re-enter the marketplace in this virus economy? Let's go in this order. Jeff Volpe, Sean Daugherty, Josh, Rob, Charla, Neil, and Tony, and then Josh, you finish it up. So we'll go from you.
Wow, that is a challenging thing to hone it into one tip. I would say that all businesses are going to have to continue to manage an incredible amount of collaboration and positivity. And I think what this will do is allow your core strengths to transform from an analog in-person space to a technology space. And if your business is sound and innovative and your people are, then they'll be able to morph themselves into this new time warp we're in, because I think we just skipped 10 years and moved ourselves into a new economy, a new way of doing business. And I think positive leadership and collaboration is really, really critical.
Thank you. Neil Grover?
Oh,
Yep, I agree. That's great. But also where we come to play and where I think can be really helpful is, when companies start to advertise again, you're walking a fine line. And so I think obviously getting being as authentic as you possibly can is going to be even more important. Obviously, one way to do that is by utilizing your audience, your customer base, and that's where really getting that user-generated interaction can be so powerful. Utilizing your customers to help drive that community interaction and having them help you tell that message to the rest of the audience, I think is even more important now than ever. So you don't come across as trying to take advantage of the moment, but really authentically engaging with your customer base and utilizing their message to help drive your message.
Thank you, Neil. Sean?
I'm going to jump a little bit over and say that, one of the things I've realized is that we needed to do a lot of internal education on how we jump into a Zoom platform or a Skype platform. And there were people within the organization who weren't accustomed to working like that. And so one of the things that we had to do right out of the gate is to try and bring everybody up to speed with this new norm. And I think a lot of companies are seeing those struggles from different, older demographic employees, but we need to reevaluate our tech platforms and how we communicate and do some internal education to make sure that this is successful now and into the future, because it's going to be a part of the new norm.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sean. Josh?
Am I on mute? Nope. Great. Fantastic. So adapt, adjust, execute. And in my world, that means be where the customer is, whether you're an end user, consumer, shopper, know where they're shopping now. Familiarize yourself with shifts in consumer behavior. If you're B2B, I think, and this falls perfectly in line with what Neil just said, think about your audience, think about your primary customer. What are they doing now? What shifts in behaviors have they had? And how can you adapt, adjust, and execute, and provide them the real solutions they need? So it's really thinking about your customer and what their new norm is and adapting, adjusting, and executing towards that.
Thank you, Josh. Great, Charla. Okay.
I think that the two defining words we're going to have to lean on in the short, medium, and long term are going to be optimization of risk and agility. And toward that end, I think every organization, small, medium, or large, needs to really ask some deep questions. They need to ask questions such as, what am I missing in terms of my data? And this gets down to cyber risk and internal adjustment as well, and processes. They need to ask, what questions should I be asking right now in order to be where the customer is? And what are the metrics that will help me understand the waves that these massive multiple waves that we are going to experience are going to roll out? I think they should ask, who am I leaving out? We are at a point in which an inflection point when we really need to consider diversity in design and diversity in data if we're really going to be able to do what Josh was just talking about, adapt, adjust, and execute multiple times, and do that quickly with the optimization of risk, both all enterprise risk, including cyber risk.
Awesome.
I literally did my best to type out every single word you just said.
Well, so cool. Thank you, Rob.
Very well articulated. I'd say two things. I'd say for that have children, this is a remarkable moment as you're now balancing these new remote learning regimens with the opportunity to do something that your kids would never have normally had the chance to do. So if you have the capacity and resource to do this, think about hooking your child up with an area of passion. We have a company called Varsity Tutors. You can choose any number of players to do this, and many have these basically specials right now of helping people cope with the time that we're in. But for example, I've had a son who's 8 years of age, start to do the Roblox studio coding environment, just making sort of drop and drag mods, but actually coding and scripting, which I never would have thought was possible for an 8-year-old. And while I love my son, I think a lot of kids his age could do this. He's now doing this 3 times a week. My daughter, who's 6, is doing a digital art program where she's essentially drawing with someone who's a Photoshop expert and doing incredible work, and she wants to be honest and make amazing creations that I don't have the printer capacity to print out. Otherwise, my house would be decorated with it. The examples going on. You can get a voice coach. You can get music amplification. You can do things right now that will blow your mind. And when your children go back to school, you're going to say, wow, I never thought about this. My kid all of our children have particular geniuses, right? This is the moment to help stoke those geniuses and help find them. And again, there are many resources on the web. Varsity is one of many. The other one I'll say very quickly, for those that are older and those that are running businesses, to your points, and then there's something that's really interesting. Talk about benefit and government programs. Google lifetime learning credit, or the lifelong learning credit. The LLC is actually a $2,000 learning credit that you can use on just about anything, on Udemy courses, Coursera courses, anything you'd like to learn. And guess what? It's a full tax credit, not tax deductible, it's a credit. So if you ever think about a time where you had more spare cycles to learn, and you're an employer, you want your employees to learn digital marketing techniques, to be, to understand some of the terminology that Josh and Neil were talking about today, but you don't have the money because the SBA didn't respond with your loan in time, tell them about the lifelong learning credit, because they can spend money today and get it 100% marked off their taxes. It's like a free gift from Uncle Sam. There should be more of those. But right now, that's something anyone can take advantage of, the lifelong learning credit.
For all my EDU friends, I think we have life being born to another show over here. The great feedback, Rob, and I took notes on that credit. We're going to get that out to everyone. Thank you. And last but not least, Tony.
Well, not one thing. I think you should listen to everybody on this panel, because they've pretty much given you the roadmap to success and survival through this. And to me, it's pretty simple. The way I can sum this up is you need to know who you are and who your brand is. You need to be authentic. You need to know who your demographic is and who you serve. And you need to be able to find where those people are. And data is the new fuel of the economy. It dictates everything, and those that have it, those that embrace it, and those that embrace the technology that allows you to deploy that are going to be that ones. And really, you just can't be afraid to change, because it's a brave new world. And we're just, nobody has the answers, but everything that everybody provided here, I think that's the roadmap.
Thank you very much, Tony. Great closing thoughts. And to all of you, what an absolutely awesome interview. And this is what it was all about, is bring the best minds together to give the best advice to the best people. And that's what the Internet Marketing Association is all about. I'm very thankful for you making the time to being on our show. We look forward to getting this out to everyone, and we will be in touch. So thank you. Episode 7 is a wrap.
Thank you.
See you.